You know that feeling when you remember like exactly what happened? I
Right.
mean, you remember the exact words they used, the room you were standing in, and you just remember precisely how you felt in that moment.
Oh, yeah. Completely vividly.
Right. But then when you bring it up to them,
Hmm.
you are hit with this incredibly calm, solid wall of,
Yeah.
you know, that's not how it happened.
And they might even throw in this really concerned look and tell you that you're just twisting everything.
Yes, it's wild. Suddenly you're just standing in an alternate reality. Like they're shouting, well, that was just you mishearing their tone, their broken promise. That's just you expecting way too much.
It's a complete flip.
It is. You try to have a normal conversation, and suddenly you realize you aren't just arguing about the details of an event anymore. You're literally watching someone rewrite history right in front of your eyes. And the terrifying part is, if you aren't careful, you'll actually start believing their version instead of your own.
Absolutely. I mean, it leaves people feeling entirely disoriented. The psychological toll of that specific experience is profound. And unfortunately, it happens far more often in relationships, workplaces, and families than we'd really like to admit.
Which is exactly the focus for today's deep dive. We are looking into the psychological phenomenon of manipulators rewriting history. And we have a truly fascinating stack of sources to pull from today.
We really do. It's a great mix.
Yeah, we're looking at clinical psychology articles from outlets like Psychology Today and Medical News Today. We've got insights from behavioral experts, actual definitions from domestic abuse organizations like Safe Lives, and, this is my favorite part, some incredibly raw grassroots community discussions from Substack and social media where people are, sharing what this actually looks like in real time.
Right. The very world application of it. And our mission today is very specific. We aren't just here to validate a frustrating experience for you, though, I mean, it is certainly validating to hear that you aren't crazy. But we are going to decode the exact playbook that manipulators use to alter reality. We're going to explain why they do it, dive into the actual neurology of how this, literally changes the wiring in your brain over time, and most importantly, arm you with the psychological tools you need to defend your own memory.
I love that. So when we say rewriting history, I feel like people throw that phrase around casually all the time. Like someone remembers a movie differently, we joke, oh, you're rewriting history. But the psychology sources define this as a very specific malicious behavior, right?
They do, yeah. The literature draws a really hard line between just a simple difference of opinion and this kind of behavior. There's a phrase from our clinical sources that I think captures the severity perfectly. It describes this as strategic erasure and reconstruction of events to avoid accountability and maintain control.
Wow. Strategic erasure. That sounds, I don't know, almost surgical.
It is surgical.
It implies this isn't just someone having a foggy memory. It's a deliberate editing of conversations and motives so that one person always looks innocent or justified or, victimized.
Exactly.
To truly protect yourself against something that deliberate, we have to start with the motive.
Yeah.
Like, why? Why would someone expend so much cognitive energy to reconstruct reality like that?
Well, escaping accountability is the most surface level motive.
Yeah.
I mean, admitting a mistake comes with consequences, right? It demands an apology, maybe a change in behavior or some form of restitution.
Right, which takes effort.
Exactly. So by altering the history of what happened, the manipulator completely dodges that responsibility. The past is quite literally altered to clear them of all charges. But the deeper, much more powerful motive is actually the protection of a fragile self-image.
See, this stood out to me in the research. These individuals have this almost desperate need to always be the hero or the victim in every single story. Like, their ego simply cannot tolerate being the villain.
Yeah, the mechanics of cognitive dissonance are what really drive this behavior. Individuals with highly manipulative or narcissistic traits usually construct this grandiose but incredibly brittle self-narrative.
Brittle's a good word for it.
Right. They build an identity entirely on the idea that they are inherently good, always rational, or maybe perpetually misunderstood. So when their actual behavior contradicts that narrative, say they do something deeply harmful or cruel to you, it creates extreme psychological distress. The brain basically hates cognitive dissonance.
I was actually trying to wrap my head around this, and a biological analogy came to mind. It's almost like a psychological organ rejection.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, if a surgeon puts an incompatible organ into a body, the immune system recognizes it as a foreign threat and just attacks it to protect the host.
Right.
So in this case, the manipulator's ego is the host, and the terrible thing they did is that foreign organ.
Yeah.
Their psychological immune system violently attacks the actual facts of reality just to protect their self-image.
That is an incredibly accurate way to visualize the internal mechanism. The ego basically attacks the facts until the facts change.
Wow.
The sources actually provide a really striking example of this regarding affairs in a state called
Oh,
limerence.
right, the obsessive romantic infatuation thing.
Exactly. When someone deeply betrays their spouse, the dissonance between, I am a decent person and I just destroyed my family is just way too painful for them to hold. So to resolve that, the betrayer will retroactively reorganize their entire marital history.
So they just rewrite the whole marriage.
Pretty much. They will convince themselves that the marriage was always terrible, that their spouse was always cold, and that they were suffering for years.
So they take, like, a decade of positive memories,
Hmm.
family vacations, shared jokes, and they just paint over all of them with misery.
Yes, because if they rewrite the past so that they were essentially, quote unquote, forced into the affair by a miserable marriage, well, then they don't have to face the reality of their own destructive choices. They get to remain decent in their own story.
That is wild.
It is. And beyond protecting their ego, altering the past serves a third crucial function, which is maintaining emotional and social power. Control the narrative, and you control the entire dynamic of the relationship.
Okay, so if that psychological immune system is the internal engine driving the behavior, what does this actually sound like when they open their mouths? I mean, how does someone systematically dismantle your reality without sounding utterly ridiculous?
Well, it rarely starts with a massive, unbelievable lie. It operates on a spectrum of distortion that escalates over time. The most blunt instrument they use, tactic number one, is flat-out denial.
Just saying it didn't happen.
Right. You bring up an event. Perhaps they called you a terrible name the night before, and they respond with zero hesitation. No, I didn't. I was totally calm.
I imagine the sheer confidence of that denial is what throws the victim off balance.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, am I crazy?
Exactly. The brazenness is the whole point. It shocks your system.
Yeah.
But when pure denial doesn't work, they pivot to tactic two, minimizing and reframing. They won't deny the event happened, but they'll just shrink it down. They tell you that you're blowing it out of proportion, or they reframe their hostility as like a joke that you are simply too sensitive to understand.
Which effectively makes your reaction the actual problem rather than their behavior.
Precisely. Then the behavior becomes a bit more surgical through tactic three, which is selective editing. They will recount an argument back to you, but they meticulously remove their own insults, their threats, and their broken promises.
Just editing them right out of the timeline.
Yeah, they present this highly curated version where they were just calmly trying to talk to you, and you seemingly lost your temper for absolutely no reason.
Okay, wait, I want to push back on this specific point for a second, because this feels like a really murky area. I mean, when human beings tell a story from their own perspective, we are naturally biased, right?
Sure, of course.
We all tend to highlight what the other person did to provoke us, and maybe conveniently gloss over the harsh tone we used. So how do you distinguish between just a flawed, biased human perspective and this toxic, manipulative, selective editing?
That's a great question. The distinction lies in the ultimate intent and the reaction to being challenged. Normal human bias definitely exists, but a person with normal bias is usually just trying to defend their actions. A gaslighter goes a massive step further.
How so?
Their intent is to systematically dismantle your capacity to trust your own perception. A biased person wants you to see their side of the story. A manipulator wants to convince you that you are fundamentally broken for having a side at all.
Oh, wow. So the goal isn't just winning the argument. The goal is breaking my trust in my own mind.
Exactly. Which leads right into one of their most damaging tactics. Tactic 4, assigning new motives. They engage in a complete moral inversion of the past.
Moral inversion.
Yeah. If you did something out of care or concern, they retroactively label your actions as manipulative, smothering, or controlling. Simultaneously, their own selfish or destructive behavior gets rebranded as setting healthy boundaries or a cry for help.
Flipping the script entirely, so they always hold the moral high ground.
Exactly. And finally, tactic 5. When they feel entirely cornered, they just resort to outright fabrication.
Just making things up.
Totally inventing conversations that never took place, claiming they warned you about something they literally never mentioned, or accusing you of saying horrific things you never uttered. When someone subjects you to this escalating spectrum, from brazen denial to fabrication, it transitions from a difficult argument into a full cognitive assault.
Man, that's heavy. And you promised earlier that we would talk about the neurology of this, like how it actually changes the wiring in your brain. Because reading the sources from medical news today, the toll this takes on a victim is devastating. It goes so far beyond just feeling misunderstood.
It really does. We have to look at how human memory actually functions. Most people think of memory like a video file stored on a hard drive, right? You open the file, watch the memory, and close it.
Right, like a recording.
But neurologically, memory is actually a reconstruction. Every single time you recall an event, your brain has to physically rebuild that memory from various neural pathways.
Wait, so the act of remembering actually makes the memory vulnerable?
Yes, it's called memory reconsolidation. When a memory is brought into your conscious mind, it becomes temporarily unstable and highly suggestible before it is saved again. Manipulators exploit this biological window.
That's terrifying.
Right. When you retrieve a memory and someone you deeply trust looks you in the eye and confidently tells you that you're remembering it wrong, your brain's natural bias towards social consensus clashes with your own recall.
So your brain wants to agree with the person in the room.
Basically. And if they do this repeatedly, your brain can literally save over your original memory with their fabricated version.
That explains so much. The victim begins to genuinely believe they are losing their mind. I mean, you start adopting their framing. You label yourself as forgetful or unstable or overly emotional because, well, that's the only explanation that makes sense if their reality is the true one.
Exactly. And this creates a really dangerous dependency. When you doubt your own sanity, you seek an external anchor. The abuser always appears incredibly certain of the timeline. So the victim begins to think, well, they remember things so clearly, and my memory is always full of holes. I should just defer to them.
It is essentially like handing over the administrative passwords to your own brain. You just outsource your reality.
Anyway, it is sourcing your reality.
It's like your internal compass. The thing that tells you what is true and what is false is completely demagnetized by their constant interference. Instead of trusting your own needle, you just turn to them and ask which way is north.
That is a terrifyingly accurate description. And following that dynamic to its logical conclusion brings us to the most tragic outcome discussed in the clinical literature:
Right.
profound identity damage. Notice that in every rewritten history, the victim is always the root cause of the problem.
Right, like they cheated because you were distant, they screamed because you were annoying, they lied because you couldn't handle the truth. Everything leads back to you.
The events are manipulated to serve as an indictment of your character. This creates a deeply ingrained internal narrative where the victim actually believes they are the deficient one. They think they're the difficult partner, the toxic employee.
And then they stay.
Right. They begin to feel grateful that the manipulator even tolerates them. It dismantles self-esteem from the inside out, making it incredibly difficult for the victim to ever leave.
The idea of losing trust in your own cognitive function is just, it's terrifying. And if your compass feels broken and memory is biologically malleable anyway, it brings up a very practical problem for you listening. How can you definitively tell if you are being actively manipulated or if you simply do just have a faulty memory? I mean, humans forget things. We misinterpret things all the time.
We do. But the clinical articles provide a really robust diagnostic framework to distinguish between normal human forgetfulness and malicious gaslighting. The first major indicator is the attitude toward uncertainty.
Okay, how so?
Well, a person with a normal faulty memory usually admits some level of doubt. They'll say, I don't remember it that way, but maybe I got it wrong. Let me think about it. They leave room for human error.
Right, they aren't totally rigid.
Exactly. But a manipulator engaged in rewriting history insists on absolute, unshakable certainty. There is zero room for doubt in their curated version of the story.
So they are suspiciously confident about every single detail.
Very suspicious. And the second, and perhaps most crucial diagnostic tool, is the pattern of the errors. In manipulative rewriting, the quote-unquote mistakes in memory are never random. They are highly strategic and directional.
Meaning they always point the same way?
Yes. The misremembered details always benefit them. They always emerge as the hero or the victim. The rewritten narrative always casts you as irresponsible, cruel, or irrational.
Ah, so the red flag is the unbelievable convenience of their amnesia. They never accidentally misremember a detail in a way that forces them to apologize.
Exactly. It is a highly curated amnesia. You will also notice extreme defensiveness, hostility, or anger when you present them with objective evidence.
Oh, like if you show them a text message?
Yes, if you produce a text message, an email, or a receipt that completely contradicts their rewritten history, a normal person expresses surprise or they apologize for forgetting. A manipulator goes on the offensive.
Right, they attack.
They attack you for keeping score, they claim you're taking the text out of context, or they pivot entirely to attacking the tone you used to bring it up.
So if you feel grounded, competent, and sane at work and with your friends, but you constantly feel confused, doubtful, and forgetful around one specific individual, that localized confusion is the hallmark of manipulation.
Absolutely. That environmental contrast is a massive indicator. If the confusion only exists in their presence, well, they are the source of the fog.
So once someone realizes they are trapped in someone else's alternate timeline, what's the antidote? How do we actually rebuild our defenses when our memory has been so thoroughly compromised?
The accountability experts and psychological guides offer several actionable defensive protocols. The foundational step, and you really have to do this, is documenting your experiences to create an external hard drive for your memory.
Keeping a private record, like a journal.
Keep a private journal, note the dates, the specific phrases used, the sequence of events, save text messages and emails in a secure folder. When they inevitably attempt to deny an event happened, you don't have to rely on your compromised memory. You have a private anchor to reality.
So you can just look at the record and quietly validate your own sanity.
Exactly. Step 2 from the sources involves breaking the isolation by getting external reality checks. You take the documented story to a trusted friend, a support group, or a therapist and ask point blank, does this sound manipulated?
Because when you are inside the fog, you can't see the edges of it.
Right. Someone outside the dynamic can spot the rewrite instantly. And then the third protocol is a cognitive tool used right in the moment, naming the tactic. When they begin twisting the past, you internally label it. You tell yourself, this is reality reframing. This is selective editing.
Oh, I like that. Doing that shifts you from being an active participant in their drama to being more of an observer of their mechanics.
Exactly.
You stop reacting to the content of the lie, and you start analyzing the technique itself.
And that cognitive distance leads directly into the fourth and often most difficult step, refusing to debate your reality endlessly. You utilize phrases like, I remember it differently, or we are not going to agree on this timeline.
Okay, I have to stop you there, because refusing to debate sounds incredibly empowering in a textbook, but human nature makes us crave shared reality. In the heat of the moment, when someone is standing right in front of you, lying about your own life and your own intentions, every cell in your body wants to scream the facts at them until they admit the truth. Walking away from an argument about your own life, it just feels like letting them win.
Oh, look, I get it. It goes against every instinct we possess to defend our character. But this requires a fundamental paradigm shift. The goal of saying, I remember it differently, is absolutely not to convince the manipulator.
Because they will never concede anyway. Conceding requires the accountability they are actively dodging.
Exactly. If you engage in the argument with the goal of forcing them to agree with your reality, you will just exhaust yourself and further erode your own sanity. The purpose of refusing to debate is to build an impenetrable wall around your own mind.
Okay, I see.
It is a radical act of giving yourself permission to validate your own version of events without requiring their signature of approval. You stop them from hacking your memory by refusing to grant them access to the terminal.
That's a great way to put it. You are taking your compass back and trusting your own reading of North, regardless of what they say.
Yes, but there is one final vital protocol that organizations like Safe Lives urge everyone to understand. You must look for the broader pattern of coercive control.
Because this manipulation rarely exists in a vacuum.
Right. It is almost always part of a larger ecosystem of abuse. Coercive control is a systemic pattern of behavior designed to completely strip away a person's autonomy and sense of self.
Wow.
So if someone is rewriting your history while simultaneously isolating you from your support network, maybe controlling your finances, monitoring your movements, or employing subtle threats, you are not dealing with poor communication skills. You are dealing with a comprehensive system of control.
That's a huge distinction.
It is. Recognizing that pattern is the critical first step to seeking specialized professional help to extract yourself safely.
Well, this deep dive has been intense, but incredibly clarifying. If we distill this vast amount of psychological research down to a core takeaway for everyone listening, I think it is this. Manipulators do not rewrite history because the past is foggy or unclear to them. They rewrite it because the objective truth demands a level of accountability they simply refuse to carry.
Perfectly said.
You do not have to accept their edits to your life. You have the right to stand firm and say, my memory matters, my perception is valid, and I will not allow someone else's narrative to erase the reality I actually lived.
Claiming ownership of your own timeline is truly the ultimate act of psychological self-defense.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us as we unpack this complex topic today. If you found some clarity in these sources, take that insight with you. And if you ever find yourself in that editing room, fighting over the final cut of your own life story, remember to trust your own compass.
Before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, kind of expanding on everything we've analyzed today. We have spent this time examining how one individual can use denial, selective editing, and fabrication to hack the reality of a single person in a relationship.
Right.
But consider this mechanism on a macro scale. If it is this incredibly easy to exploit the neurological vulnerabilities of someone who is actually in the room, how susceptible are we to entire institutions, corporations, or political movements utilizing this exact same psychological playbook to rewrite our collective history? The next time you consume a news story, a corporate press release, or a historical narrative, ask yourself, who holds the pen in the editing room, and are they quietly ensuring they are remembered as the hero?